This year, I'm sad to report, is shaping up to be one of the deadliest for motorcyclists in recent memory. 25 people have died in motorcycle crashes in the province of Ontario through mid-July. That is only 6 shy of the 31 deaths that were recorded all of last year. So about halfway through the year at 25, there were 31 motorcycle fatalities in Ontario in all of 2016. So we are on our way to a sadly record pace for motorcycle deaths on Ontario roads in 2017. What can we do to protect ourselves? Rob Deutschmann is a personal injury lawyer and friend of the program, joining us this afternoon. Mr. Deutschmann, good day, sir.
Mike, man of the people, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Really appreciate your time on this. I am a motorcyclist. I'm very interested in motorcycle safety, but numbers like this, they're obviously cause for concern. They're rather alarming when we hear of that many fatalities.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about this year, too. I mean, you would know, how many good driving days have you had?
Not enough.
You know, and yet we're on track for a record number of fatalities. So something doesn't seem to be right out there.
When we are, as riders, Rob, what can we do to limit the impact that an accident may have on ourselves, on our families?
Yeah, you know what, Mike? Motorcycle accidents, the worst files that I deal with are the result of motorcycle vehicle accidents, and you know, it's no shock. It's the motorcycle driver that receives the brunt and the worst of it. It's a tough one. When you look at studies out there, Mike, they'll tell you that in most of the situations involving a motorcycle and another vehicle, it's at least two-thirds of the time, it's because the other vehicle did not see the motorcycle. It's the inattentiveness often of the other people that results in the serious injuries suffered by the motorcycle driver. So it's not, we can't put the blame on the motorcycle driver. This is something that has to be shared by everyone in terms of better awareness on the road. And it's the same old saw. Slow down, pay attention, no distractions, look where you're going, and that would resolve a lot of things. But in this day and age, we fail on all of those.
Yeah, it's interesting because also in my profession, I'm constantly scanning the radio dial. And I find myself, honestly, and I know I'm going back about 30 years here when we put AM and FM, 40 years, AM and FM on the car band of the radio, right, instead of just AM. And my goodness, we have these buttons now for presets that kind of distract us. Or we add CD players or other, forms of media into our cars. Even without our phones, for crying out loud, there's a lot going on that you can lose attention on the road.
Yeah, and when I'm talking about attention on the road, I'm not only just talking about what's happening within our own vehicle, okay? Just think about this, for example. Put yourself in the wheel of your car, behind the wheel, and you're at an intersection wanting to make a left-hand turn. And you're waiting, and you're watching for oncoming traffic to make sure it's safe to go through. And you see there's a break in the cars. And you go. And then how many times do you stop for a split second and say, I didn't check for the pedestrian?
Oh, my gosh. I know. Yeah,
right? It happens all the time. But the thing with the motorcycles is oftentimes we may not see, and this is the thing, I was just reading an article about people's memories recently, because as a trial lawyer, you're going to be in situations where people testify and say, yeah, this is what I remember. This is exactly what I remember. And they have this thing called, I think it was flashbulb memories, which sometimes can be a false scenario. And oftentimes I'll hear from people and say, well, that car came out of nowhere. No, it didn't come out of nowhere. I'd say, is that a straight stretch of road that you were going to cross over? Yes, it was. Were there any hindrances blocking your view, like a billboard or something right at the corner? No, there wasn't. Well, that vehicle didn't come from nowhere. And so what often happens is you don't see the vehicle coming in. With motorcycles, because you're dealing with one headlight, for a lot of vehicles, they don't see the motorcycle coming and make that left-hand turn. And that's the biggest culprit, is making that left-hand turn into the path of the motorcycle.
So, Rob, you mentioned earlier that in two-thirds of these cases, it's actually the driver who didn't see the motorcyclist.
Right.
So as the motorcyclist in this scenario then, and if I'm fortunate enough to still have my life, what recourse do I have legally at that point?
Well, it's pretty clear. I mean, if the other person turned into your path and caused the accident, then you have obviously the right to sue that person for all the damages that arise from that incident. But let's just take a step back for a second. Before you even got onto that motorcycle, you obtained a policy of insurance, okay, to be able to ride that motorcycle. And knowing that the most serious injuries happen to people who are on the motorcycle, you really have to take a look at that policy you just purchased to make sure that it provides you with adequate, sufficient protection. And one of the things I'm talking about here, and I've talked about this from time to time, is optional coverage. When you purchase your insurance, you're entitled to purchase additional coverage because I can tell you, Mike, the basic policy does not provide a very good level of medical coverage to you. But for very low cost, in discussion with your broker, you can upgrade the amount of coverage that you have without any fights with your insurance company about getting access to that medical coverage. And that way then, if you're involved in an accident, and hopefully you're not, but if you are involved in an accident, then you will have better medical coverage. Because you can sue for all this stuff, but it takes a while to sue. When you're hurt in an accident, you need immediate coverage, immediate treatment, and you don't want to be stuck with a policy that provides very inadequate coverage for you or causes a delay of years before you are able to access adequate medical coverage.
Yeah, that's interesting. Rob, you mentioned also earlier it's kind of the same old saw, right, about paying attention on the road or driver inattention being responsible for these unfortunate crashes on the road. Do you get tired of it? I mean, I know in some ways coldly it keeps you in business, but in other ways,
right.
I mean, my gosh, you're seeing the same thing time and again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I tell you, Mike, the trend is towards fewer car crashes for sure. When you take a look at, I know we got an increase in the fatalities, and I can't explain, it's maybe a one-year blip, let's hope, but on the motorcycle side. But when you take a look at the technology, the safety technology that they're building into cars, and it's not just high-end cars, all cars, adaptive cruise control, blind spot indicators, eyesight like they have at the Subaru, for example, and now that's available in all cars where you're not going to rear-end people. It is reaching a point, well, in driverless cars someday. Although I say we can't get elevators figured out, how are we going to get driverless cars done? But that and road design, roundabouts, reducing the severity of injuries. So all of that stuff is helping out a lot. So there's a lot of factors that come into play to improving all of that. But some of the things you can do, like I said, take your time, be careful. Look around and look at motorcyclists too. Some of them you see out there joyriding and weaving in and out of highway traffic from time to time. So this responsibility is on everyone. But knowing as a car driver that you're out there with this weapon, basically on four wheels, moving at high speed, you really have to be careful out there and take responsibility not only for yourself but your fellow person.
Great perspective as always. Rob, thanks again for the time today.
Hey, all the best, Mike, and hey, safe driving out there to you.
I will do my best. I promise you that. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Rob Deutschmann, personal injury lawyer, friend of the program here on the Mike Farwell Show as well.